Hello, welcome back. We are Touchline Talk, and we're here with another episode. We have James Grant. James, it's great to have you here today. Looking forward to this one. Been a colleague of yours for about four years when we were at Saints together. So yeah, I'm looking forward to having you on and sharing some of your experiences and giving you a few interesting questions that hopefully will be able to help the viewers with their journey and their pathway. So James, welcome.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate the invite. Good to see you again. Looking very smooth as always.
No, cheers. No, it's good to have you on. One of the big things that we're trying to do with this sort of educational platform is really give professionals out there a wide range of experiences, knowledge from all different facets of football. And I think one of the things that really struck me about yourself when I worked with you at Saints was your professionalism, your knowledge, your experience, and just the standard and the level that you really pushed the program to be. And I know we'll talk a little bit about your pathway and stuff like that, but just to give the viewers a little bit of context, what is your role at the moment, James?
Okay, so yeah, I've lived probably quite a non-linear pathway over the last few years, I would say. So at the moment, I am doing a PhD, which is based at Southampton Football Club, but through University of Gloucestershire. So that PhD is basically looking at player development. So quite holistically, what impacts upon the development of the player and the interactions with the environment from like a local perspective. So within the academy to more of a global perspective, like the influence of wider society and culture. So that's where I'm at the moment. I'm about 18 months into that. So I'm really getting down to the writing, slowly getting down to the writing, I should be. So yeah, that's the kind of first part. And then alongside that, I do a bit of teaching, a bit of lecturing, mainly around talent development and just kind of sports science related modules. And then my other role is I'm a consultant for the FA. So I work on the women's and men's pathway with the FA as a physical performance coach.
Oh, very, very nice. Like that, those roles at the moment, you seem very busy.
Yeah, a couple other projects alongside that, but I love it. I like to have multiple things going on, and it just means you kind of speak to loads of people, build loads of relationships, and it's an opportunity to kind of interact whilst doing what you're passionate about, I guess.
Yeah, I mean to be doing a PhD as well and to have the experience that you've already got must be quite challenging, but also really, really quite interesting to look at different facets and how you can put that all together. I mean, how's the PhD going?
Yeah, good. So I guess I started collecting most of my data, which involves like speaking to players, speaking to coaches, observing everything that goes on. Kind of June last year, really like formally. And obviously for the club, it was quite a challenging year. So it was a good time to be involved from a PhD perspective. But certainly having a background at the club, having a kind of obviously a bit more mature for a PhD student, I think has helped me in terms of those interactions, predominantly with kind of coaches. So I've really enjoyed it. I've loved it. It's always been my intention to do a PhD. I started one quite early on in my career, if you like. But I had to drop it for different reasons. So having the opportunity to do it now, I actually feel probably is the right time. It's just then managing life around it. So
Yeah, there's never a right time though. Like you probably feel a little bit more better suited to undertake a PhD when you're older and you've got more experience and you can draw from that and you're a bit more focused. But like I say, I'm
hopefully.
glad to know that you're able to do it now. So yeah, all the best for that, and hopefully you manage
Okay.
to come out with that doing really well.
Thank you.
So really, I just wanted to just take us all back a little bit and just look a little bit of your start of your journey and how you got to the point you're at now. Because there's an interesting little bit of international scene that I want to touch on towards the middle of this, which hopefully our viewers will be really keen to listen to. So, if I'm right in saying you started at Southampton Solent University, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I guess kind of prior to that, I had experience working within gyms, like personal trainer, fitness coach, which was really my grounding, I would say. So working with like 50, 60-year-olds, supporting them to just move. And that really started building my ability to have interactions with all kinds of people. At the same time, I was working like soccer tots type stuff, and a little bit of football
That's
coaching.
where we all
So
start, though.
yeah, exactly. No, I loved it. I think that was some of my best times. Mainly probably because it was the only time I was technically better than anyone that I was coaching. So that was kind of my grounding. And then from that went to Solent. I was in total about 12 years at Solent. And my role kind of changed. I think I started off there as like a health and fitness instructor or something like that. And then by the time I left, I was a high performance manager. So I oversaw their talent development program, or kind of dual career pathway program, depending on how you look on it, and really hopefully built a real good program with some really good athletes, but most importantly, some really good people supporting those athletes through. I felt it was through kind of a real team and collective effort that we built to develop something. And then when I left there, it's kind of definitely the right time to leave and move on to sort of pastures new. But I would certainly say in terms of development, a university is a great place to be. Maybe it's slightly changed now because it's become more transactional, but yeah, back then the opportunities you had to do different courses, like a university can't not support you in your own development, that's kind of fundamentally what they're for. So I really kind of exploited that, if you like, and got as much out of it as I could whilst I was there, whilst also tapping into different things outside. I was quite conscious that I'd been in the same place for quite a while. So I worked at like London Irish, doing little bits there, different sort of projects, and then that worked on to doing some work with Saints as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you've just mentioned on there, like not just having just one perspective or one view on it. So during your time at Solent, to go out and see different clubs, different sports, different ways of work, and I think that's really an important point just to focus on, because sometimes we can, I guess, get a little bit lost in our own bubble, I guess, and think that everything we're doing is top work, really, really fantastic. And it's not until you actually go and challenge your thinking or go and watch other teams, clubs work that you actually can have more experience and more knowledge to go, okay, why are they doing this? What are they doing that? What are we doing? How can we improve ourselves? And obviously you were at Solent for like I say, 11, 12 years. So that program, from where you started to where you left, what were some of the biggest challenges you had at Solent? What would you say are some of the biggest things that you were able to improve, and what are your reflections on having left?
Oh, mate, that's really good. It's something that I think about quite a lot, actually. So the biggest challenges are that with most organisations, like the bureaucracy involved. So actually getting things done was really hard. So I had to kind of find ways of working the system, I guess, to get where I wanted. I always had a vision for what I wanted to achieve once I started the kind of talent or performance program. So yeah, the challenge was being able to, I guess, manage up to a certain extent to get what I felt the program needed and the support needed to athletes. I think what we built was this program at a smaller university, not very well known, but a program that really focused on developing people and developing athletes. And I think that's where it hit home, that was one of my kind of skill sets, is really just supporting people, and hopefully like a generalist type knowledge that I built over time as well. You're quite lucky when you work at a university with multiple athletes, multiple sports, that you can draw from loads of different environments. Like I used to go out and just chat with track coaches when they're working with athletes, or like we had figure skaters, windsurfers, like so many different sports with different types of athletes, or different types of characters, personalities, but alongside that, the opportunity to interact with their coaches, their kind of support practitioners and things like that was massive. And I think hopefully not just myself, but the team around me, so our kind of lifestyle support, other S&C coaches, physios, all had that opportunity to engage with athletes, but that kind of wider scope as well. And think that brought everyone to a point where they kind of like the standard thing, kind of the boat going in the same direction type stuff. And I felt, I felt we really achieved what I was going for. And it just felt like we were almost like a tight community. Not just the practitioners but the athletes. So across, you could have a boxer in a gym that's like a heavyweight boxer, having really nice interactions with a figure skater or a track athlete, and it became quite a good family feel. But everyone was there for their development as well. And then I guess reflections, I definitely left at the right time. Maybe it could have been a bit sooner. I spent about 5 or 6 years pushing to get a new gym, a new facility, and I left basically as that facility was completed. So this brand
I saw pictures. Yeah,
it was. You know what? It was at the time. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I've done all this, and then I've left at this point. But like I say, it was definitely the right point, and it was just a facility. I was really proud because I impacted or input on what that facility looked like. But it was a brand spanking new facility that could cope with 30, 40 athletes, like an American football squad, if you like. It was amazing. But actually, since that point, I've had conversations with those that were there across that period, if that makes sense, and actually said it just doesn't have the same feel. It hasn't created the same environment that we created, which is actually quite nice, and it makes you reflect that shiny, pretty things don't always do the job, right? That was tough, but really in reflection actually worked pretty well. And then, I guess in terms of my period of life then, so I actually took voluntary redundancy at the point, because I decided that I wanted to move back to my family in Sussex. And then I got offered a couple of jobs in Sussex. A variety of things happened. The sale of our house collapsed. Place that we wanted to buy then collapsed. I then got offered a job at Saints at the same time as getting offered a couple of jobs down in Sussex. And I was like, all right, well, what should we do? Just kind of went well, I'll just stay in Southampton and work at Saints. The opportunity to work in full-time football, why not? And I don't think I've ever made a choice, certainly over the last sort of 15 years, never made a choice based on money or finances. It's always been based on what are the opportunities I get there and where's the challenge. And it's always been about that. And I think, like I said, at Sohn, I was there for a long time, but I always sought out challenges at that point. That meant that sometimes financially it's been a struggle, but also sometimes there's been some rewards to that as well. It's definitely more intrinsic rewards and development.
Yeah, and I think that's a key thing in terms of when you're younger, or when you're really trying to be the best person you can be, or the best professional you can be, or you've got aspirations to really improve your knowledge. Those things ultimately are you paying the cost for that, but to improve yourself, it's those things ultimately at some point in your future will come back and benefit you. You might not see the initial rewards at that time, but to have that mentality and that growth mindset to go, look, okay, there's something much bigger than the financial reward at this moment in time. It's about learning, it's about improving, it's about improving my knowledge, because then ultimately those roles in the future, and it's a little bit like what we sort of explain to players, I guess, where you've got two things. You've got the process and you've got the outcome. And sometimes I think if we're too focused on the outcome, which maybe in this instance is the financial reward, we forget about the process. And if we forget about the process, well, then that financial reward, the outcome, might not be there. Mm-hmm. And if we ask players, same as us as coaches or sports science, if we cut corners, then we're not going to reap the rewards and benefits of what we're trying to achieve. So I think it's absolute credit to yourself for having that sort of mentality and going, look, there are things that are bigger than money at this moment in time in my career. Now it's about learning. Now it's about improving my knowledge. And some of the things that you mentioned that I really, really like, and I think this is where, personally, from someone looking out into your experiences, what you did at Solent for me, when you're talking about you're speaking and you're looking at boxing, you're looking at windsurfing, figure skating, all of these different sports, rugby, etc. Your ability to learn about those sports and about how sports science, conditioning, training sessions are all put together in a range of different sports. For me, I mean, I'm going to pose this question to you, but I would imagine that those experiences going into your role at Saints have allowed you such an amazing understanding of how to adapt, how to plan sessions from a S&C perspective to benefit the holistic development of players.
Yeah, totally. I would say some of that underpinning theory and then supporting that with some practical application definitely has helped. But you know what? I think ultimately those experiences were about, like, they were relational experiences. So it was about interactions, and that's helped me in kind of everything that I've done, hopefully. Because I would say, like, as a character, I'm generally quite introvert. But
Okay.
actually that's quite a useful thing. Do you know what? To have to build relations
Yeah.
with people, and like, I guess my, not an issue, but the way I see S&C and sports science is like, it's not black and white. There's a lot of grey, and actually lots of things work and lots of things don't work. So if you can get buy-in and get people to engage, which comes from building relationships, then like you've done a good job. And then if you
Yeah.
align that with like they're being challenged, and through challenge we know that you learn, and you like generally people enjoy being challenged. If you're hitting all
Yeah.
those aspects, then you're developing athletes, yeah, definitely, but hoping to support them with development of players.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I agree with you. The relationships is something that obviously we as coaches and as professionals, and we always spoke about when we were at Saints together. That professional side, the communication side, the relationship side is such a key thing, and completely agree with you in terms of if you can build up those relationships with people. And like I say, when you're working with the little tots or when you're working with the seniors and stuff like that, having that broad range of experiences with all of those different types of people is ultimately going to serve you well for when you work with a range of different athletes who have all got different personalities, and your experience and your knowledge of how to interact with them, how to find ways to motivate them, ultimately then is going to give you that successful process, which is going to allow those athletes to really listen to you carefully, make sure that the processes that they're doing in the gym, in the practices, in the sessions with you are the best. And I guess one of the big things with that, when you build up those relationships with people, is your ability to critique them and give constructive feedback to them without them thinking that you're being negative, because you've built up that trust and you've built up those relationships with those people. I guess that's probably one of the key aspects of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that I've worked with, or I guess worked for some coaches, some head coaches, and like directors of programs that have really shown me the way to do that. Like, no messing, straight to the point, and really influence in terms of how they think things should be done. And I've taken quite a bit from that. Some of that is like, maybe you don't always approach it that way, but I think a lot of that is that most people appreciate straight talking, and most people appreciate that straight talking with like a listening ear as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think
yeah.
that's something that comes through in most environments that you're in.
No, for sure, for sure. I mean, it's been that's a really nice little way to transition now. So, your then next role took you to Saints, which is obviously where we met at for a while. I think we spent about 4 years together. I think you got there just before me, but you were there for about 6 years, was it?
Yeah, 6 or 7. There was a bit of a blurred couple of years with COVID and stuff, or a blurred year with COVID.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I kind of started, I was brought in by the new technical director there at the time with the women's side. And yeah, had the opportunity to really be creative in what we did. It was kind of quite a new program, the opportunity to be a new program. And absolutely loved it. Like, I love working with guys like yourself, like different coaches that were. It was kind of. It was pre the explosion of the women's game, I guess. So we were really given the opportunity to develop a program, which I think, I think most people in that program and that saw that program would say probably it was best in class, both from a coach perspective, but from a kind of physical performance perspective as well. And we were doing some real innovative stuff, and ultimately, I think the players were smiling most of it, which, like I said, is the most important thing for me. And then that kind of progressed into that full-time role. I was supporting the sort of women's team. Women's team starting at the kind of near the bottom of the pyramid, and then supporting them to kind of work to them where they are now in the championships, a sort of second tier, which was a real challenge because we were like smashing teams every week. So trying to really develop them physically around that was pretty difficult. But again, I guess that gave me the opportunity to explore and be creative in what we were doing with those players. And we had lots of young players that I'd worked with, like they were then kind of senior or first team players, and I've worked with since the age of 12, 13, which was amazing to see. And they were like proper athletes, but also very good footballers, most importantly, probably, I should say. So that period of time was amazing. Worked with some
it was a great program.
Yeah.
It was a great program. Like, I completely agree with you that it was elite. It was absolutely fantastic to come into that environment from a coaching perspective. I mean, obviously the technical director at the time, Lois, was outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. The program that was built at Southampton, even, but like you say before, the work that had been done before, because I think I joined a couple of years after that sort of Centre of Excellence program that you guys had already sort of got going was really elite. And I agree with you that, you know, the physical performance aspect and the program that you had all created for the players that we had was excellent. What was some of your thinking, and, you know, taken from some of your experiences? What was some of your thoughts in terms of how you're going to run out and how you're going to plan the prep, the physical performance aspect for those players? Because the players, you look at some of them coming through now, they are, you know, some have unfortunately left Southampton and gone to bigger clubs. Which is also a testament to the coaching, a testament to psychology that we had, to the S&C that you guys were doing. I mean, the program was elite, and to see those players sort of move on is, from a holistic perspective in terms of everyone's work, is obviously ultimately what we all want to achieve. Obviously, you want them to try and stay with Saints, but obviously because, like you say, the level where the club was at the time made it very difficult for that always to be the case. But what were some of the key things that you had to, or that you wanted to put in place, either from the younger players' perspective in terms of the younger pathway, and the senior perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think at the time it wasn't like I sat down and built a plan. What I did do was sit down with Lois, and we went, right, like, this is how we want to go about it. It's an opportunity to explore and really kind of be best in class. That was our plan. Do you know what I mean? And then just giving the freedom to do that. And I guess with the younger age groups, it was very much about like getting them to enjoy some of the physical activity that went around it. I think prior to me coming on board, they had someone from quite a kind of military background, so it all felt a bit like that. I guess like a bit old school. So I wanted to bring some contemporary kind of S&C or sports science ideas into it. But again, the focus was just them enjoying it. And then with some of the kind of more sort of adolescent age groups, it was about like really developing their variability of movement and getting them kind of to explore some of those fundamentals alongside that. And we had like, they were lifting in the gym at sort of, even under 12s, we were doing a bit of lifting if their movement was good, but certainly under 14s, under 16s, they were in the gym lifting, right? These were strong girls, and that helped them, I thought, like mentally more than anything. They felt good. So I think they felt stronger on the pitch, whether they were stronger or not, and whether it transferred, I'm not sure, but they definitely, like that psychological side of it, I thought was massive. And then with the senior team, a similar sort of thing. That was quite difficult because we had players that were coming from outside that probably hadn't had the sort of training experience in terms of the physical element, or even the sort of exposure on the pitch. And then we had ones that had come through the program that, in my opinion, like moved really well on and off the pitch. So that was quite a challenging time. So trying to get everyone to the same point was difficult, but I had the opportunity to do some really nice individual work as well, which I love doing. I guess the intention was to be best in class, and I think we achieved it at that point in time. And I think we're almost seen as a bit of a, I guess, example to other clubs at the time that had first teams that were in WSL, etc. But our academy was certainly seen as that, the example of what it should look like.
The program was very good.
Yeah.
The program was right at the top. I mean, one question that I know we spoke a little bit before coming on, and there's a topical debate, especially at the moment with the Women's World Cup, and that's sort of generally always been a debate in women's football is obviously the aspect of injuries, specifically obviously the aspect relating to ACL and knee injuries. What sort of knowledge have you got around that you could share, and what do you think? And it's obviously a growing area in terms of research and development, but in your experience working at Saints and beyond that, what sort of reflections have you got on that?
Yeah, so it's a really tough one actually. So, I think, so if we said that I've been involved in women's football for 10 years now, probably in total, at different levels, different age groups, etc. There was a period of about 3 years where within the programs that I was working on, there were no ACLs, right? And then in one season, I think we had 4 ACLs across different age groups from I think it's basically from under 16s to first team. And at the time I was like, what am I doing wrong here? What's going on? So I kind of went from we don't have any ACLs, we're obviously doing everything right, to then going, oh, well, the program's terrible. Our physical performance program is not doing what it's supposed to do. And that was really hard.
Was it after? Did you say that was after?
After that was
you said you had, was it 3 years with nothing, and then was it the
following year? The fourth year. Yeah, that's the point. And actually, we had a couple of ACLs with players that had built a really good relationship with, so it kind of hit me quite hard. One that was quite towards the end of her career, one that was at the start. So it hit me hard as a practitioner, as a person. Found it really difficult. And then I was well supported by people at the club and had some good conversations with those outside the club as well, to go these things happen and we just don't know. We don't know why. So there could be there's nothing wrong with the program, but you also have to, I think, even if people are saying that, you have to look at what you're doing every time. There has to be some sort of critique of the process, or you have to look at where there are potential weaknesses in the program and problems, and try and identify where you can go with solutions. I believe that with everything. But what it got me to was to a point where ACLs or big injuries like that are so multifaceted. It's hard to pin down what it is. And we know there's a growing amount of research around linking ACLs to menstrual cycle and those aspects. And that's definitely what I've seen from some of these cases that I've been around. But I don't think we got to the bottom of it. It's in the men's game, we're still getting multiple hamstring injuries, more hamstring injuries, I think, last season than we have done for a long, long time. And there's so much research. So there's just things that we just can't seem to find solutions to. And unfortunately, the ACL on the women's side is a real tough one, because there's lots of reasons that we know of and lots of research suggesting evidence that practitioners like myself are trying to find solutions to in our day-to-day with players. But we're still not kind of bringing down those numbers, if you like. So I think it's a real hard one. Something that I believe in, like a couple of the players that I work with that suffered ACLs was there was a loading element to it, like whether it's a spike.
I was going to ask you about that. Is that something that could be?
Yeah, I think there's like
Could
an
be
underload,
more of a contributing
spike
factor.
in load. Yeah, certainly for me, that's something. I think also there's like a variability pattern to it. I think a lot of the time, like, and this is probably the same in the men's game, we have players that are fixed in positions really early on, so then they haven't got a variability of movement to cope with changes.
Okay,
Yeah, so like as an example, one of the players I worked with was like a left back, so always worked that way. So always went on the outside and actually got her injury cutting in on the from the other side, from the right. I spoke to her, and she never played anywhere apart from left back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think what it has emphasised for me is we need to create more opportunities for variability of movement. People, you need to be almost used to being placed in vulnerable positions and then be strong in those vulnerable positions, which we don't do in traditional S&C. Okay, so that's where I think we need to start thinking about how does what I do transfer to some of the actions, interactions, movements they do on the pitch.
I mean, I can remember, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I've got a feeling I can remember in some of the S&C sessions that I can remember back from Saints, there were some sort of tag games. You did some multi-directional work and stuff like that. I remember that quite a lot. And as you know, working years ago with real youngsters in schools and stuff like that, tag games for me was always one that I absolutely loved and saw many, many benefits from, not only from a coaching perspective in terms of vision, peripheral vision, but the multi-directional, change of direction, change of speed, all of that is probably similar to what you're saying there in terms of tell me if I'm wrong, but those sorts of things in terms of tag games, multi-directional games is probably, like I say, from an early age for boys and for girls, but specifically if we're talking about girls now, it's probably a really good thing to try and get in early.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think it has to be in early, but it has to be in late as well. Do you know what I mean? Like it has to be done for me with senior
all
players.
The way through.
Yeah, like apart from anything, it breaks the monotony of the day-to-day, those linear warm-ups where you're doing like your hamstring kicks or whatever, which are boring as hell. I think being creative and engaging with some multi-directional game-like activities, I think is really useful from a physical and mental perspective. And I think it creates that variability because you don't know what's coming, which we get on the pitch right all the time. You don't know what it looks like. It's not like chess. So I certainly think that's something that we need to explore a little bit more. The
logic is there, isn't it?
Yeah.
The logic is there that if the game requires players to change direction, change speed, almost with an instant all the time through the game, then the training sessions need to replicate that, if not even more to a higher level to push on those players. So for example, basic tag games, multi-directional games, bigger spaces, smaller spaces, obviously will change the dimensions, change the difficulty, change the need for faster reactions, slower reactions, more high-speed velocity, more quicker change of direction. All those sorts of things are probably quite useful from a training methodology perspective to help prepare those players for actually what they're actually going to have to do within the game situation. But exactly. The research is quite interesting, and it'd be good to know. I'm sure we can hopefully get a follow-up chat with yourself in the future when we get that key bit of research that tells us. But like I say, there's always going to be injuries in the male game, in the female game, all the way through, and to eradicate it is probably going to be impossible.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think you're right. But what I do think now is that we're getting better in terms of injury adaptation, I would call it, rather than rehabilitation, because I think with an ACL, it's not like it ever gets back to where it was. But I think we're getting better at supporting players to get back on the pitch and then stay on the pitch and trying to reduce that re-injury as well. So I think practitioners, like medical staff, are getting more creative in what they're doing, and actually starting to push a bit more on players to make sure they're ready to get back on the pitch. But yeah, I think we have to be aware that a lot of those players that suffer ACLs are never going to be quite the same. They're always going to need that support, and there's like the asymmetries in strength, etc., are always going to impact. So it's about injury adaptation. And I think, like, speaking to a couple of players I know that have come through it, actually they've found new ways of being or new ways of doing on the pitch as well. And I think that's an important thing to support as a practitioner.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's obviously a very serious injury, so hopefully we can improve on that side of it, and hopefully keep reducing those. James, the next thing I wanted to ask you, and this is something I've been really looking forward to sort of delving into a little bit more detail with you. So, you then decided to leave Southampton, is that right? And then what was the process, and where did you go?
Oh, mate. So yeah, first lockdown of COVID, like most people, just got kind of itchy feet. Both me and my wife at the time kind of got itchy feet, and one of my kind of friends ended up moving over to Vietnam to take a job as sort of head of physical performance at the National Academy in Vietnam, and then kind of spoke to me and to see if I was interested, and I was like, yeah, like why not? The wife and I had always spoken about traveling and wanting to move somewhere and experience a different culture, different environment. We quite often spoke about like Spain or somewhere like that, somewhere a bit closer to home and maybe not so different. But I love the idea of being in Asia, mainly because I love Asian food. That was a driver, so the opportunity was there. I had to it wasn't like this guy just phoned me and said you can have the job. I had to go through like a real process. It was really tough. So I was had a guy, the technical director, and still there now, a guy called Eric Abrams was there, and he led the Belgian Futures program with like Vincent Company, De Bruyne. So me, I was like, the opportunity to work with this guy that's been in football development, talent development for 20, 30 years, I can't turn that down. And the opportunity to go and work in a program that was still very much emerging, with like a real broad spectrum of people. Like, if I could get the job, then I've got to go for it. Got offered the job, lots of conversations, lots of long walks with the wife at the time to discuss it, conversations with my kids, and then just went for it. Yeah, like it was a real challenging time, to be fair, because I put my resignation in at the club, we rented out the house, and then we were on delay for a good couple of months because couldn't fly, obviously, because of COVID. It was really hard to get a flight. So we were packed up all our stuff and we're living out of people's kind of houses in spare rooms with like the four of us for a period of time. And then ended up flying out there in December 2020. Was in quarantine, the four of us in quarantine in the hotel for 2 weeks, as two adults that basically probably didn't have a day off training in their life, found that really difficult. So it was really creative in some of the training we were doing then, but got some great food, to be fair. And that was a challenge. And then
that's why you went.
Yeah, exactly. And then went into the job. So I guess the actual job was physical performance coach for the Vietnamese. I guess national program is how we probably refer to it. So it was like a 3-star FIFA football academy that was trying to develop young players in Vietnam. And at the time it was like under 11s through to under 19s, and actually developed a senior team as well. But the kind of primary role was to support those sort of younger age groups up to about under 17s, and support the physical performance coaches, like native physical performance coaches, in their development as well. So that was a great opportunity to support some young guys coming through that they didn't have they haven't got the academic kind of education support background that we have here. There's no real sports science courses or anything. So that was really good. mate, and I absolutely loved it. Like from the first day, I've worked in so many environments where I had interactions in the UK where I've walked in and felt a bit of an imposter. You know, I think that's quite a familiar term now, that imposter syndrome. And I walked into this place, and there was only me and this other guy that were English at the time. Loads of Vietnamese, obviously, lots of French guys, Belgian guys. And I never felt so at home when I walked into a working environment. I don't know what it was, but I absolutely loved it. And then the players, I've always enjoyed working with players, male, female, in this country, but went over there and they just absolutely loved it. Everything. They loved everything. Like the program, the boys were, so they all stayed in the academy. So came from wherever across the country, stayed in the academy from those younger age groups as well, and trained Monday through to Friday, game day Saturday, and on a Sunday you'd see them out in the cages playing football or taking free kicks, practicing their free kicks. Like they just loved it to an extent where I had to. There was periods where I was living at the academy where I had to just go out there and say no. And that was the extent of my Vietnamese. I could say no. Just to try and get them to take a break. But also, I think it really showed that, like, just giving players the freedom sometimes. Like on the Sunday when they were playing in the cages, some of the stuff they were doing was better than I saw through the Monday to Friday when they were training, just because they were able to experiment. So that opened a different, I guess, a different eye for me, or a different lens. So the opportunity there was to support some young players and give them exposure to things that they might not have had previously, and actually work with the technical director in developing what was going on the pitch from like a physical perspective. But Eric was very much like games-based approach. And he was trying to get coaches that were very much from more of a traditional technical focus approach, and then you do some running alongside it. He was trying to move those, I guess, nudge them along to this games-based approach as well. And I was totally on board with the games-based approach. I think that probably comes across from some of the other bits I was saying. And then we kind of supported that off the pitch in the gym as well, with some more of that variability and movement, but also some real underpinning strength. I had that opportunity to do that there in a program that was pretty much full-time. And I loved it, and I put on a bit of weight because of the good food, but I absolutely loved it. And then there were some big challenges around it, some massive challenges, some personal challenges in terms of the kids. When we moved out, I was expecting them just to go to an English speaking international school, and it wasn't as easy as that. We had to pay some big money to get them into school. And then COVID, when we went out there, it was 0 cases. And then within the first sort of 6 months, I'd say exploded, but exploded over there was there was 10 cases, right? It's a bit different. So we went into it. We had 2 or 3 lockdowns there where myself and the family had to move into the academy. It meant it really impacted on my kids' schooling. And then so kind of 9 months in, we were still in a lockdown. So the lockdown was great because we were in a 3-star academy with a nice hotel and some great sporting environments for my kids to play in. But ultimately we know that it impacts. So we took the decision to send them home. So that the boys and my wife came home. I stayed out there for a period of time. Which that was really tough, but also I loved it at the same time. I built some really good relationships with some of the Vietnamese guys out there as well. And
I mean, that's tough.
Yeah,
that is tough to make that decision. I mean, can't underestimate the challenge. I think I can remember talking to you at the time and thinking that is a long way to be apart. And obviously, it's a really brave decision, big decision, obviously for the benefit of your kids.
Yeah, and there's been some challenges that come off the back of that, but it was definitely the right decision at the time for the kids. That was the most important thing. We went out there with the intention of giving them the best experience possible, and because COVID, they didn't get that. And maybe, so from some of my, probably been a little bit naive as well, thinking we'll just go out there and find them a school and they'll be fine. It just wasn't as easy as that. It was definitely the right thing to do for them. For myself and the wife, maybe not so much. Like I know she still wanted to be in Vietnam, and actually I was offered another 2 years of my contract out there at the time, and so like yeah, from a job perspective, was loving it, and loved the country. The people in the country are amazing. So if anyone ever gets the chance to visit Vietnam, get out there. But yeah, it just didn't work out. But what did work out is some of the experiences I took from it, like will last me forever, and I can take into every environment, even the environments I'm in now. Like some of the challenges, like being in a room where you're with, like your lead is from Belgium. You got French coaches that have polar kind of opinions and views on football to you, and then you got Vietnamese guys that you can't really interact with. Yeah, that's.
I guess that's the key for me to just quickly, because I know we're only got a couple of minutes left. One thing I really just wanted to say to you was that experience, going to a foreign country, obviously it being so far away, working with those different nationalities, working with those different people, for advice for coaches and reflections from that. How do you feel those experiences have improved you, and what advice would you give to other sports science staff out there, other football professionals, in terms of that sort of working abroad or not being sure if going abroad is right for them?
Yeah. I think like it's easy to say that everyone should go and work abroad, right? Because I think, and we've spoken about it, and lots of people I know that have been abroad, I've spoken to and said like it's been massive for them, really changed how they see things and maybe how they work, and improved their ability to interact with all kinds of people. And there definitely is that. But I think you have to make sure it's right for you as well. So if you get an opportunity, really dig in and research that opportunity and make sure it's right. But yeah, I think the main things I took from it was almost like the confidence in knowing that I can build relationships with anyone, and I can develop people and myself to really impact whatever that is. And I think it also emphasised the fact that like you never stop learning, you never stop development, which I know is a bit cheesy now because everyone says it, but it is true. Like I don't believe we're ever out of a process. We were talking about process and outcome earlier. I don't think there's ever an outcome. It's always a process. And I think that's what it emphasised to me. And you know what? That's why, like when I knew I was coming back, I wasn't searching for this full-time job with loads of money. What I was searching for was the opportunity to continue that. So I was like, well, when I go back, I want to do a PhD because I want to learn more, and it's always something I wanted to do. I want to teach, so I want to share my knowledge and my experience, and then I want to carry on coaching because like that's my passion. I kind of love being on the grass, and still probably miss doing that now, which is why I do the FA work because it gives me that touch still. So yeah, I think if I went like 3 key takeaways, it would be like make sure it's right for you. Okay, know what you're going out for. All right, and then whilst you're out there, continue to reflect on what you're getting from it and what you can take back. But yeah, ultimately for me, what it has left me is the real urge to just continually travel. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've been quite lucky with some of the roles that I've had this year. I think I've done like 8 different countries this year for different work things, which has been great. But it's made me want to go back, and at a time that's right, when my kids are like old enough, then I'll go back out somewhere and do it again because it's amazing. Like, yeah, you get so much from it if you choose the right place. I might go a little bit closer to home.
I need to get you to Spain. Need to get you to come over.
Oh, mate, I'm up for that. Yeah, like there's been a few opportunities since I've been back, but they're probably a little bit too far at this point. And like, yeah, I would definitely do my research and make sure it's right, but also at the 100%. You just like even if you're in a place for 2 or 3 days, a different culture, different environment, you get a sense and you get a feel for it. And I think those little experiences are massive. Like I went over to Stockholm this year to AIK over there, and had some really good conversations with coaches there. Yeah. And even that experience, I came back after 2 or 3 days and I went, I just took so much from that. It's amazing. So it doesn't always have to be like a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Just having the opportunity to interact with different people in different cultures and environments is massive. just making sure you reflect on it and take it back with you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, James, I think that's fantastic advice for people out there. I just want to say thank you very much for your time. It's been really, really interesting. Nice to know some of the challenges you've had, how you've overcome those, and I think some of those points, especially the part looking at, okay, if you're going to go abroad, do your research first. And I definitely agree with you on that one. It's tough, and absolutely fair play to you. You know, taking the family and the kids halfway across the world really to go and do that is no small feat. So
Yeah, I would say don't do it. Don't do it in a global
for...
pandemic either. Like maybe make it a little bit easier
No,
for yourself. Next time, I'm going to make sure it's not in a global pandemic. Right?
Yeah, I think hopefully we've got a number of years before we ever witness anything like that again, for sure.
Yeah.
But James, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your wisdom. Always great talking to you. I'm sure the viewers are going to be really pleased and take a lot away from this. So if I do get any questions, I'll pass them on to you. So if you do have any questions, put them in the comments, and I can pass them on to James and can get those answered for you. So James, just want to finish. Thank you very much for your time again. It's great chatting. Have a good day. And yeah, look forward to catching up again soon.
Yeah, mate. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. Anyone wants to contact me, feel free to pass my details. Yeah, always good to kind of have conversations with people. And carry on doing what you're doing, mate. Great work. Speak to you soon. Yeah.
No, take care, James. Thank you very much, and speak soon. Take
Cheers,
it easy.
Bye.